the last transmission from Ambassador Threlvok of the Karithian Dominion lasted 11 seconds. Do not. A pause, static crackling like breaking glass. Do not attack the humans. Whatever you do. Recall the fleet. Recall it now, then silence. Grand Marshal Osik Var replayed the message 4 times in the war chamber of the flagship, Ember of Karith, his 4 eyes narrowing with each pass. Behind him 300 warships hung in the void, engines humming, weapons armed, aimed at a single blue-green planet that Karithian scouts had designated, with contempt, as Insect World 7. "He sounds afraid," said Fleet Commander Yassa Rel, her mandibles clicking in disbelief. Threlvok has stared down a Varaxian dreadnought without blinking. "He does not get afraid." "Then what is he?" Osik asked. Nobody answered. Because 6 hours later, when the Karithian fleet found the wreckage of Threlvok's diplomatic shuttle, not shot down, not sabotaged, simply stopped, its hull intact, but its crew compartment eerily, impossibly empty. Nobody in that war chamber would sleep again, but none of this had begun that way. 4 months earlier, the Karithian Dominion had never heard the word human. They were an empire of 17 star systems, ancient beyond memory, ruled by a council of ember-born nobles who had not lost a war in 6 centuries. Their ships were beautiful and merciless, forged from black alloy that drank starlight. Their soldiers, the Karith, stood 8 feet tall on average, with chitin-plated skin and 4 burning eyes that could see heat itself. They believed, with the calm certainty of a species that had never been proven wrong, that they were the apex predators of the galaxy. Then a scout ship, the Silent Current, drifted through an uncharted sector and picked up a radio signal. Not a weapon, not a warning. Music, a recording of something called a symphony, bleeding out into the void from a small, unshielded world on the edge of Karithian space. Captain Das Bareth, commanding the Silent Current, found it fascinating in the way one finds an insect fascinating before stepping on it. "Send the ambassador," the council ordered. "Determine their military capacity. If they are weak, we absorb them. If they resist, we erase them." Threlvok was chosen because he was the best they had. 300 years old, a veteran of 40 first contact missions, fluent in negotiation, deception, and quiet menace in equal measure. He did not expect much from a species that had not yet mastered faster-than-light travel. He landed in a city called Geneva. On a planet the humans called Earth, expecting fear, he found something else entirely. "You're telling me," said the human negotiator, a woman named Dr. Elena Vasquez, gray-haired, unarmed, sitting across a table with nothing but a cup of coffee and a tablet, "that your empire wants to know if we're worth conquering." "I would not phrase it so bluntly," Threlvok said. "But yes." She didn't flinch. She didn't call for guards, she laughed. A short, tired sound, like someone hearing a joke they'd heard 1,000 times before. "You should leave," she said, "not because we'll hurt you. Because you genuinely don't understand what you're looking at." Threlvok's eyes flickered, the Karithian equivalent of a raised brow. "Explain." So she did, and what she told him should have been impossible to believe. A species barely 300 years removed from burning each other alive over land disputes. A species that had detonated nuclear weapons on its own soil twice. Not out of malice, but out of fear of what might happen if they didn't understand the weapon first. A species that had, in the span of 2 centuries, gone from horse-drawn carriages to landing machines on their moon, to mapping the human genome, to building machines that could think. "We are not advanced because we are peaceful," Vasquez said. "We are advanced because we nearly destroyed ourselves twice and learned from it. Everything you're about to threaten us with, Ambassador, we've already done to each other. We know exactly what it costs." Threlvok did not believe her. That was his first mistake. The council, upon receiving his report, laughed outright. A species that measured its own history in centuries, not millennia. A species without a single starship. A species whose greatest weapon, according to their own scientists, could be outrun by simply not being on the planet when it detonated. "Send the fleet," Grand Marshal Osik Var declared. 300 ships. We will not even need to fire. But Threlvok, still on Earth, still watching, still listening, had begun to notice things the Council's reports had missed. He noticed that human scientists did not fear his technology, they studied it, openly, in front of him, taking notes, arguing about equations, occasionally shouting, "That's impossible," and then, within days, making it slightly less impossible. He noticed that when he mentioned Karithian shield technology, a physicist named Dr. Adebayo Okonkwo didn't ask how to defeat it. He asked how it worked. And by the end of the conversation, had sketched 3 theoretical counters on a napkin, dismissing 2 as probably wrong, and pocketing the third. He noticed that humans did not have a single military. They had over 100 fractured, quarreling nations. Nations that, upon learning an alien fleet was approaching, stopped quarreling within 72 hours. Something the Karithian Dominion, in 600 years, had never once achieved among its own vassal states, but the moment that changed everything happened in a small research facility, outside Geneva. 3 weeks before the fleet arrived, a young engineer named Priya Nair, barely 26, showed Threlvok a device the size of a briefcase. "It's not a weapon," she said, almost apologetically. "It's a resonance disruptor. We built it to study your engine harmonics, purely academic." Threlvok examined it with the mild interest of someone humoring a child, then she switched it on, aimed it at a decommissioned Karithian shuttle sensor array sitting in the facility's courtyard, a piece of equipment his own ambassadorial escort had left behind, and the entire array went dark, permanently. Not damaged. Erased, as if it had never held a charge at all. "How?" Threlvok said, and for the first time in 300 years, his voice shook. "We're still working on the math," Priya said. "But we think if we scale it up, it'll do that to your shields, your engines, basically anything that runs on the same principle your tech does. Which, near as we can tell, is everything you've got." She smiled, not cruelly, but with the exhausted patience of someone who had explained this to men who wouldn't listen many times before. "You should really tell your people not to come here." He tried. The council did not listen either. Inside the council chamber on the Karithian homeworld, beneath a ceiling carved from the bones of a long-extinct predator species, 7 ember-born nobles sat in judgment of a report they did not want to believe. "You are asking us," said Councillor Ithmarin, oldest of the 7, "to abandon a conquest before it begins, because of a briefcase. I am asking you to consider that we do not understand what we are looking at." Threlvok said, "I have spent 3 centuries reading species before we meet them in battle. I know fear, I know arrogance, I know desperation. This is none of those. These people are curious. They do not defend their world by hiding its weaknesses, they show you exactly how they would kill you, and then ask if you'd like to see it again, slower, so you understand." Councillor Marin waved a clawed hand, dismissive. "Curiosity is not power. On a species with 10,000 years of practice turning curiosity into power in a matter of weeks." Threlvok leaned forward. "It is the only kind of power that matters." The vote was 5-2 in favor of the invasion. Threlvok's was one of the 2 dissenting voices. The other belonged to Fleet Commander Yassa Rel, who would later tell no one why she had changed her mind. Only that she had watched a recording of Dr. Vasquez laughing at an alien warlord, and something about the sound had unsettled her more than any weapon ever had. 300 ships dropped out of hyperspace above Earth, on a gray Tuesday morning. Their shadows falling across an ocean that had no idea what was coming, and for 11 minutes, nothing happened. No weapons fired, no demands were issued. The Karithian fleet simply hung there, vast and silent, waiting for the terror to set in. It did not. Instead, every screen on every Karithianage bridge lit up with a single incoming transmission. Not from a government, not from a military, but from a woman standing in what looked like an ordinary office, holding a mug that said "World's Okayest Scientist." "Hi," said Dr. Elena Vasquez. "So, your ambassador tried to warn you. We tried to warn you. I'm going to try one more time, and then I'm done trying." She set down the mug. "Everything in orbit around our planet right now is running on Karithian power cores, correct? Same design, same harmonic frequency, across your whole fleet. Because your empire never had a reason to diversify, nobody ever fought you hard enough to make you change." On the ember of Karith, Grand Marshal Osek Var felt something cold settled into his chest that his species did not have a good word for. "We do," Vasquez continued, "we've fought each other for 10,000 years. We've had to reinvent our weapons every single generation, because someone always figured out how to counter the last one. You've had 6 centuries of nobody trying. We had 6 hours, with your ambassador's stranded shuttle, and that was enough. This is a bluff, Osik said to his officers, though his voice lacked conviction. It's not, Vasquez said, as if she'd heard him. Recall your fleet, go home, tell your council that Earth isn't worth it, not because we're strong enough to beat you in a straight fight, we're probably not, yet, but because every ship you send here teaches us something new about how to unmake you. And, we learn, faster than anything you've ever encountered. That's not a threat, that's just what we are. For a long moment, no one on the ember of Karith moved, then, far below on the surface, in the same courtyard where a briefcase-sized device had once erased a piece of alien hardware into silence, Prianair's team activated the full-scale resonance array they had built in 3 desperate weeks. Not to act, but to demonstrate. A single outdated Karithian corvette, the same class the Dominion had gifted Earth's scientists as a gesture of goodwill during negotiations, sat in a hangar 3 miles away. Its engines died instantly. Its lights went dark. Its hull, structurally sound, sat there like a tomb, a silent, perfect promise of what 300 ships would become, if the demonstration scaled up even slightly. The transmission cut. The silence that followed lasted 4 minutes, then Grand Marshal Osik Var, veteran of 40 campaigns, conqueror of 6 worlds, gave an order he had never given in his life. Fall back, he said, full retreat, all ships, immediately. The Karithian Dominion did not attack Earth that day, or any day after. Threl Vok, found alive weeks later in a maintenance tunnel beneath a human research facility. Hidden not by the humans, but by his own quiet choice to disappear rather than watch his empire march into a war it did not understand, returned home to stand before the council one final time. They are not strong, because they have big weapons, he told them, in the same chamber where his warning had once been dismissed. They are strong because they have never stopped fighting to survive and, they never will. We built an empire on the assumption that no one would ever challenge us again. They built a civilization on the assumption that someone always will. The council did not banish him, they did not need to. Within a year, half the Dominion's outer worlds, hearing the story of the fleet that turned back from a planet with no starships, began quietly asking a question the Karith had not heard directed at themselves in 600 years. What if we are not as strong as we believed? Vassal systems that had bent the knee out of fear began testing that fear for the first time, sending petitions instead of tribute, questions instead of obedience. The Dominion did not collapse. Empires that old rarely fall in a single year, but something inside it had cracked, quietly, permanently, the way ice cracks long before anyone hears it break. On Earth, life continued much as it always had. Dr. Prianair published a heavily redacted paper on harmonic resonance theory that would, within a decade, become the foundation of humanity's first true deep space defense grid. Dr. Adebayo Okonkwo kept the napkin, with his 3 theoretical shield counters pinned above his desk, a reminder that the universe was bigger and stranger than any equation. And in the halls of a dozen governments that had, for 72 miraculous hours, stopped arguing long enough to survive, the peace did not last. Humans went back to quarreling within the month, the way humans always did. But somewhere, in the quiet space between panic and pride, something had shifted. They had looked up at 300 warships and, instead of despair, felt something closer to curiosity. Earth never fired a single shot. It never needed to. Because Decifer in a small office outside Geneva, Dr. Elena Vasquez set down her mug, looked at the empty sky where 300 ships had been, and said the only thing that mattered. Told you.